And she just snipped a cigarette. Like, she said, "You ever think about entertainment law?" And I thought, what is that? Is that like entertainers dancing? You know, I'm thinking, when you say entertainment law, I'm thinking, are we singing or something? And she said, no, it's doing our contracts. As Black artists, we don't have African Americans representing us.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. I'm your host, Zach Reynolds, for another episode of Musically Hitched. Today, I have a special in-studio guest, and more importantly, a great friend, Mr. Attorney James Walker Jr. James, good to see you.
Good to see you.
Always a pleasure. Thanks for joining us today. This is all about discussing how our lives are intertwined with the gift of music, and this brother is no exception. So I'm looking forward to this conversation. It's been a long time coming. We always have great ones, so we're going to invite you all to be a part of it today. So let's get into it, shall we? So James, I always like to start with, we've known each other for a while. I don't want to take anything for granted. Can you take us to your roots? Where did you start your musical journey? But maybe even more important, where you're from, where were you born, and when did you realize that music was a part of you in your DNA?
I was born in Norfolk, Virginia, where my dad still lives, and my parents separated when I was very, very young, and Mom moved to Connecticut. And at about 11 or 12 years old, they put a trumpet in my hand, and then at church, they put me in front of an organ.
Oh, wow.
And I started at 11 or 12 years old playing the trumpet in about 6th grade. And I'd always loved music, but I had little flutes that I played, little recorders you buy in the store. I would fool around with recorders, but never anything serious. And then a music teacher, John Pearson, took me under his wing at about 12 years old from 6th grade, and I stayed with him from 6th grade through 12th grade.
Wow.
And I played trumpet during the week and on the weekends for parades, graduations, whatever. And to the point where, he was looking at sending me to Berkeley to study music by the time I got to my senior year. And then I visited Howard and decided I wanted to go to Howard to prepare for law school, but I was still always playing organ, piano, doing weddings, all the talent shows at Howard, doing the Apollo. And from 12-year-old on, I just loved music. My mother says I would come home, go in a room and just practice the trumpet all day. Yeah. And then it got to the point where, you find, you're 12, 13, 14 years old, you find the other guys who do that. Yeah. And everybody's got a room of synthesizers and drum machines, and you're reproducing the popular rap songs of the moment or the popular pop culture music songs and trying to see, can we play them? Whether it's Michael Jackson, Lionel Richie, Eric B. and Rakim. I mean, we could do all the bass lines. I still can play them to this day because we would have just jam sessions all the time. And it's great now. A lot of the guys from that same crew are in the music industry as songwriters, producers, engineers, attorney. Yeah. And we all still stay very tight because we remember the days in Bridgeport, Connecticut, where I grew up right outside of New York, probably 50 or so miles from New York. Yeah. And we were playing our instruments. And I look at it now as just an outlet, just something just a release. Every now and then I'll do a wedding. Every now and then in Atlanta, the St. Regents will have me just come over and play on a Friday night.
Really?
If I'm in the neighborhood and there are people there who know I play, they'll say, hey, you can take the piano for an hour or two, and I'll just do a litany of love songs.
So James, you're like the guy at Von Maur over at the Perimeter Mall. They've always had like a live piano.
Oh, do they? Okay.
In the store, Von Maur, I think it's the store, and it's always incredible to hear people just sit there and just play for hours. So you've done that before.
I've done it a lot of times at St. Regis. I used to have my staff, been practicing law now over 20 years, and what I used to do back in the 90s and early 2000s is I would tell my staff, book me somewhere where they have a piano. Because I don't really drink, I don't really smoke, I'm not the guy club hopping at night. So if I went into a city and I'm in the city from tomorrow morning, through the next morning, and I'm gonna have meetings from 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. When I get back to my room at 10, 11 o'clock at night, I would want to have a piano. Yeah. So my staff would book me at hotels, the Embassy Suites, the Marriott, who had a piano somewhere in the building. So I could go play. And the funny story, Zach, is you always get the hotel manager that's like, he's got a big sign up, do not play, do not touch. And you walk over and you start playing Here and Now by Luther Vandross, or Greatest Love of All by Whitney, or Misty, or something popular by Michael Jackson or El DeBarge, and the next thing you know, the whole room gravitates.
Somebody get that sign, take that sign.
And then the manager, never fail, comes over and goes, keep playing.
Right.
Just go have fun. Because everybody in the lobby, is enjoying the fellowship. And for me, it's just a release.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not trying to impress you. I'm not trying to draw them. I'm just sitting there getting out that 12-hour day.
That's awesome.
And that's what music basically does. It's very cathartic, therapeutic, and just emotionally relaxing. If you really get into it and play by ear and read music as I do, you can enjoy music on a whole, different level.
That's awesome. So when did you learn? I just heard you say you read music. So that was obviously a part of the training in band.
In band.
So you still read, sight read. Someone puts a sheet of music in front of you. Just like a book.
Like a book, yeah.
Wow.
And I took the trumpet, which is written in the same kind of bars as the piano. The notes are the same. So I took what I learned in trumpet and just transferred over to teach myself how to read sheet music on the piano. Awesome. And sometimes I'll take paper out, draw 5 lines, and pick something up by ear. And when you get this age, you start worrying, okay, if I don't chart this out, I'm going to wake up next week and say, how did I play that John Legend song again? So you'll take pen out and you'll start writing out F, G, A, B, C, lower F, so that when you look at this next week, you can remember the general progressions, chord progressions of the song, and then your ear will kick in if you remember the melody. But I'll write it all out on sheet music all the time just to keep it, familiar. And when I was doing churches, I was a minister of music for years. I had to learn the whole hymnal.
Okay.
I moved to Hartford after Howard, and young couple, married kids. And I remember I was at a church called Archer Memorial AME, and I remember the bishop's wife. I came in here and I'm rocking Kirk Franklin, the reason why we sing. Exactly. And I'm thinking, I'm kill. She handed me a hymn book and said, can you learn pretty much every hymn in here, all the famous ones? Right. And you come to church that next Sunday, and the bishop would say, we're going to do hymn number 418. We're marching to Zion. And you had to read that book, and learn how to move with the service. And at the time, you're in your 30s, I didn't really appreciate it. But over time, I was like, wow, this mother really taught me something. Yeah. How to appreciate real music.
Exactly.
So I started traveling with my hymn book and with a little binder that had all my favorite songs in it. Yeah. And during offering time, I could go to my binder and play, More Than Life by Kirk Conquerors, by Kirk Franklin. Yeah, but then during the regular, you put the hymn book up, At the Cross, Leaning, What a Fellowship, We're Marching to Zion, all those kind of songs were in the hymn book, and you had to know them. And every now and then the bishop would say, we're going to go off the program. We're not going to do 412. We're going to do hymn number 626. And you got to then be able to, walk on the edge until you get it. But God is good. Had a great experience there. Could go back tomorrow and play if I wanted. And it really kept the family close, being, involved in the church every week.
Let's come back to that point. You said something that was powerful just now. You could go back if you wanted. One thing that I want to hit is the idea of how you start something and how you finish are not always the same. A lot of people don't start as well as they finish. You get better with things over time. But leaving well is important in this industry as well.
In every industry, I tell my staffers, I tell my law students, every summer we hire 3 or 4 law students and a few kids from Howard, Spelman, Clark, wherever. And I always tell my law students, they show up May 20th, and they're going to work from May until about the first week of August. Right. And I always tell them, it isn't how you showed up, it's how you leave that people remember. Wow. So once you tell Amber, my executive assistant, hey, my last day is July 30th, or my last day is August 5th, I tell these kids, young lawyers and young kids, I say, look, close out those last 2 weeks on fire. Because that's what she's going to remember. And you're going to call 3 weeks, 6 weeks, 9 weeks from now and say, I need a letter of reference. And if people remember you were late, didn't show up at all, turned in maybe tacky work or not proofread kind of documents, or just wasn't on your A game the last final 2 weeks, they don't care how great you showed up. Wow. They don't care how you started. And we've had people, they come in and they go right here, working so hard, and then they kind of just towards the end skimper out, Wow. And you kind of say, what happened to Zach? He came on so strong. He was going to meetings with me. He was turning in stuff early. He was reviewing documents. He was up all night on email centers. And then at the end of the summer, Zach is like ghost, because in his head it's kind of like, oh, I'm already in my next space.
People leave before they leave.
They leave before they leave.
My wife calls that the representative. That's the first 6 months. She says when you meet someone new or you're doing a new job, it could be for musicians, it could be a gig. 6 months, most people are still kind of in performance mode. Wow. And at a certain point, it becomes hard to keep up with the performance.
Wow,
if it's
deep.
not really who you are,
That's deep.
you will show your true colors eventually.
When I was a minister of music, I was considered the older guy, just in my 30s, and I had a lot of 20-somethings and even teenagers who were co-musicians with me at the various churches where you play, and I would constantly try to tell them that, like, okay, we hired you this Sunday, you're going to back me up on organ. I'm going to be on piano. I'm going to kind of lead the Florida service. You're going to jump in on organ. And they would come in all amped, the first week or two. And then about month 3, yo, Doc, I can't make rehearsal. Yo, Doc, I don't know if I'm going to be able to do the 8th service. I'm only going to make the 10th service because I got this gig over here that Zach wants me to play for. Or I got this wedding I got to get to. Or I got this concert I got to play for. And I started telling them guys, like, you can't do that because first, it's just not right. But then secondly, this community is small and people talk. Right. And you'll get a reputation as being a guy who doesn't show up or who's not reliable. Yeah. And I've seen some very, very talented musicians who find themselves out of work or who find themselves doing gig, maybe here, maybe there, but nothing consistent because the pastors talk and the community talks. And Zach is not going to bring you to do one of his gigs with him if it's a 50-50 chance you may or may not show up for the rehearsals, no matter how bad you are. And where I used to humble them is, they could play anything by heads. They could play Kirk. They could play Kirk Carter. They could do any of these songs, right? And they could do all the R&B stuff. Right. I would simply come to the piano, pick out Total Praise, and set the sheet music right there and say, we're getting ready to play Total Praise in C sharp. And they see that sheet music and they go, whoa, because they had never been trained that way. Right. And the reason I would do that, and after service, I would say I did that intentionally because I want you to see we all have a place to grow. Wow. And space that we need to grow. Yes. And we all have a talent that needs to continue to evolve. And you might be the baddest organist in town, but if I put a simple piece of sheet music in front of you and you can't play it, you have to challenge yourself to say, I want to get that to my game.
There's another level.
There's another level.
More than what we often display. That's powerful stuff. Very powerful stuff. So when did you realize that you were musically hitched? Like you got the gift, the trumpet, you were playing your first chair. Was it clicking for you then that, okay, this is more than just...
I'm glad you asked that question because I want to shout out my Uncle Bill. My Uncle Bill ran a construction company when I was a teenager. And I had done something really dumb around 14 and 15. I brought like a moped on the street for dirt cheap. And probably knew it was kind of hot or stolen, but I brought it off the street off a guy I was working with at a restaurant at the time as a busboy and a dishwasher. Get arrested on the moped, find out the guy had stole the moped and sold it to me hot. So I have to go through the court process. I go back to the guy, I get a receipt, give the receipt to the prosecutors, they dismiss the case. My Uncle Bill then took me into his construction business. And he said, you're going to work with me every summer now while you're a teenager. You go to school, regular time, fall, spring, but you're going to work with me. And he saw that I had a love for music. And what he did is he took me over to the Philadelphia music store. There was a big music store on Broad Street in Philadelphia. And he said, pick out the best keyboard you want. And at that time, the Yamaha DX7 was the keyboard that everybody had. Everybody who was anybody had that DX7, brown keyboard, and a little roller here. So he brought me that DX7, a rolling drum machine, and a tracking system. And I started layering tracks at like 15 years old. So I would listen to a song on the radio, and then I would go down his basement. He gave me like a little room about big as this, finished off. And I would sit there, and at first I would lay down the drums. Then I would lay down, and I never forget Michael Jackson's Liberian Girl off of the Thriller album, I think, or Off the Wall album. I sat there and I learned the whole song through, and then I sat there and programmed every part. Sequenced it out, and my uncle would come down and he would just say, wow. Like he would hear me putting it all together. And it was at that point that I realized like music is something I really, really love. Because you'd be in that basement hours, stripping down songs, to what I call re-engineer them, reverse engineer them, breaking my own parts, and you'd have to hear what is the drum doing? What are the strings doing? What are the horns doing? Then you might say, hey, I hear a flute on this. I want to put a flute on top of it. And I would do it with Grover Washington stuff. I would do it with Michael Jackson stuff, Phyllis Hyman stuff. I would just strip the song out. I remember the best one was Axel F from Beverly Hills Cop. and both hands would be going, and then I would add all of the little drums underneath it, the strings, and the whole little wash sound.
This is arranging. I mean,
that's arranging.
Yeah, you just started arranging music. So,
but I would put the whole song together part by part, and that's when I realized like I really, really enjoyed music, and I always felt like I was that raw baseball player who could throw a ball hard in the country, but probably need to go get that pitching coach or that baseball, expertise. That's how music was for me. That if I went and gravitated to say a Berkeley or even Howard's Fine Arts, I feel like somebody could have taken the rawness and really said, okay, we're going to teach you how to really arrange, how to really score. And in 4 years of Howard, you'll be able to, but it wasn't, like my son who sang when he was a teenager and got to that age where he decided to go to Howard, I think the same thing for the first time I'm realizing kind of happened to me. That I got to that same age of 18 and said, I don't love music enough to put the work in to go to that next level. I'll always be a barroom piano guy getting $1 or a quarter in a cup, you know what I mean? But I'm not the guy that's gonna go master this to be a recording artist or to be a true artist. And I'm fine with that, I'm fine with it, but I knew enough to know I had the goods.
So James Howard University, you are a proud Bison. I've known that for years about you, and very good reason to be so. So you went there, you did your undergrad, and also law school.
Yeah.
So what was the main decision about why to go to Howard, and how did you continue along the journey? Because in essence, you said, I'm going to stop music, the musical pursuit at 18, but you literally lived your whole life serving musicians.
It's really ironic. I went on a bus trip. Miss Angela Edwards, who I talk about all the time on social media, older woman, she takes a group of kids every year to black colleges. So I was about 16, 17-ish, and my best friend Robert Kirby lived in Stanford. I lived in Bridgeport, and he told me about a bus trip he was going on. And they were going to visit Morgan State, Howard, Norfolk State, A&T, and a few other schools, and I needed $58. And I remember I was washing dishes as a busboy and the moped story I told you about. I was getting to work on my little moped and paid the $58. My mom didn't know Miss Edwards. We didn't know Miss Edwards. I just got to Stanford and got on a bus. And we went to visit Morgan State and went to visit Howard. And when I got to Howard, we met some upperclassmen students, and they kind of gave us tours of the campus. And me and Rob down there telling girls we went to Howard already. And then one of the girls was like, "What's your major?" And we didn't know what that meant. And then bus trip, Miss Edwards was like, "James, Rob, the bus is leaving. Y'all got to get it." The girls all looked at us like, "Y'all high school boys." But that trip changed my life because I saw Howard. I had never seen so many African Americans, blacks, whatever, just so together. Like when you get to a black college, whatever it is, HBCU, you're sitting in a room with people from all over the diaspora, all over the country, and you're just amazed. Middle class, poor, wealthy, celebrity, athletic, whatever, and you're all in a room and it's all us. And I hadn't felt that in Connecticut, coming from a tough, gritty inner city school. I hadn't been in a setting with so many accomplished African Americans. And I felt like, wow, if I can perform here, I'm gonna be okay. And then when I came back to Bridgeport, all my guidance counselors, teachers were like, "Do you understand what it means to go to Howard?" Like they really kept drilling into me. I was acting a clown one day as a junior or senior in the hallway, and I'll never forget Mr. Keith Perryman Jones, guidance counselor, said, "Jimmy," he pulled me in the car, and he used to talk in English and Spanish. He was a brother, and he would be, "Benga, benga," and he would call you and he'd say, "Hey, man," and slap you upside the head and say, I said, "Yo, Mr. Johnny," he'd say, "Man, you can't go to Howard. You can't be in these hallways acting like a knucklehead with all them kids over there." And these were all my boys. They all grew up in the streets. I lived in the projects for a minute. They lived in the projects. We all just related. But he would say, "Man, you have a chance here to do something special." And he tried to link me up with other Howard grads who are older than me to kind of take me under the wing and get me the maturity to understand what was at stake. And once I got to DC, that first month at Howard, August of '86, I realized, like, wow, this is special. Because you get on their campus and somebody say, "Yeah, that's Sacramento." So you say, "Who's he?" "Well, his father's the mayor of Chicago." "Well, who's that over there?" "Oh, that's so-and-so. His brother owns all the restaurants here." "Well, who's that over there?" "That's so-and-so. This Diddy, he works for Andre Harrell." It was that kind of environment where everybody was just incredible. And you stand up in a class act, and one by one, the teacher say, "All right, this is English 101. Stand up and introduce yourself." Hi, my name is Margie Jackson. I'm from Minnesota. I was a valedictorian in my high school. Because the teacher said, tell us something about yourself. My name is Tom Smith. I was number 5 in my class in Detroit. And one by one, everybody had an incredible backstory of where they were that man or that girl or that dude at their local community. They were, Baton, Banquet, what do you call it? Jack and Jill. They had all of the accolades. Wow. And I was just a gritty little single mom boy from Bridgeport, but knew how to hustle. So I get to Howard, joined a fraternity, and then I became the guy giving all the parties. My mom said, she couldn't financially afford Howard. And I knew that when I left. I told her me and my uncle would figure it out. Okay. So I started giving parties my sophomore year, I believe. And I probably gave 70, 80, maybe 90 parties from sophomore year to the time I graduated. Wow. To the point where it culminated, as some people saw, with me promoting Phyllis Hyman on the campus.
So you financed your education partially by way of the parties or completely by way of the parties?
Probably 80% by way of the parties.
Wow.
Yeah, I think I borrowed $2,500 or so. They used to have this guaranteed student loan you can get. Yeah. And I think I borrowed once or twice for that, but everything else was the parties.
So again, Musically Hitched. Again, it's like continuing to see this thread in your life, James, where you have never left music completely. And in some ways, it's literally It still is. It still is. Literally, it's been a means of survival and prosperity for you.
Music is the music of my life, I guess you would say. Right. And the parties evolved into, once I saw others coming into the party space, like Diddy jumped in it.
Yeah.
Another guy.
Were you guys on campus at the same time?
We were boys. We were very cool. I've prayed with him before. I've always been the guy to give him scriptures whenever he sees me. Okay. When he was on trial with Johnny Cochran as his lawyer, who was my mentor, I went to court to support him. He did Raising in the Sun. I brought a whole group of kids from Bridgeport to see the play. He came out. I went backstage and got him because, the manager, he's not going to come. He's busy. I said, I went backstage, Puff, come on, man. Yeah. I got my boys out here from. Right. So he came out, sat with the kids for like an hour, him and Felicia Rashad, who was also in the play. They came and talked to our kids. That was years ago. James was probably 8 or 9, so it's been some years. But the point I'm making is, at Howard, I was doing the parties. I saw others getting into that land space. So then I moved into concerts, step shows, and plays. Okay. And we evolved right into doing hundreds of concerts. We took a lick on the first ones learning that game because the bigger promoters buy the market out. So I'm bringing Zach to Atlanta. You got the hottest record in America, but I'm not from Atlanta. The guys who are here in Atlanta, they hear a word that I'm bringing you to Lyman Hall or Crampton Hall or some other hall. Okay. They go buy up all the advertising space. Wow. They just make one phone call because they're doing all the shows all year. Yeah. So they can call KISS FM or ABC or CBS, who their advertising person is, and they can basically say, hey, we're going to buy that space out. Their show isn't until December. Zach's show is August. Why are you buying ads for a December show in July and August? One reason, you want to make sure Zach's shows fail. You want to make sure it fails because you don't want me to get my legs as a new promoter in the town. So as an existing promoter here, you're carving out your turf to make sure, hey, who's James Walker? And who said he could do a show in Atlanta? And I'm like, well, I got this hot artist, Zach. I'm bringing him to Atlanta. We're going to do this BB King, or we're going to do this venue. The existing promoters spanked us in a few markets until we learned how to partner with them. We learned how to pre-sell tickets to groups, church organizations, and fraternities. And then once we did that, we never took a hit again. Wow. We probably sold out everything. I mean, just everywhere. We went up to Foxwoods. We did 15 shows, I think, with Bobby Jones at Foxwoods, taping his BT and Word Network show there. And we did live recording. We did Club BB King at Foxwoods. We also did a youth rally. This was all in like a homecoming week we put together with the casino. Freddie Jackson performed one night. We got Patti LaBelle perform there for us, and we just sold everything up.
So there was a particular person, and we're still on Howard here. There was a lady, I don't remember her name, but you told me about her once. Could you tell our listeners about this specific individual who, in essence, inspired you to pursue entertainment law? So Howard literally has evolved into, you've gone from being a musician to now a full-time student, of course, but also it sounds like almost a full-time party promoter.
Full-time, yeah.
And there's this.
Had a secretary in college.
Wow.
Had a secretary.
She
hit me up on Facebook the other day. I posted a picture. The artist you referred to is Phyllis Hyman. Yes. I posted Phyllis's picture because she died June 30th, 1995. Okay. And she had a humongous impact on my life. So I posted a tribute to her in June to honor her memory. And Nicole posted on my Facebook, I remember something about a little concert we did with her back in the day. But Nicole was my right hand. Every morning I would give her checklist of 10 things we needed to do, whether it was for our step shows, our parties, or Phyllis's event. And she would run to the bank. She would make sure t-shirts were ready. She would make sure tickets were in every region of the campus, because Howard's a big campus. So you'd have to have somebody in the School of Business selling for you, someone down in what we call the Hill selling for you, someone in the Valley selling for you, someone over at the law school, someone over at the divinity school. And then you have to have one person who's basically counting tickets and money for you all week to see, okay, how many did Zach move over at the divinity school? How many did JW3 move over at the law school? How many did Johnny move at the business school? And then I just kind of sit in the background and just watch the tickets and make sure everything's moving, so that when we get up to the night of the show, we know, okay, we had pre-sold 600 seats or 700 seats for our step show or whatever that we were doing. But Phyllis Hyman was the lady. After doing parties for 3 years and other events, I tried out doing a show with Phyllis at Crampton Auditorium. We did 2 shows with her, and I remember it was $15,000, and I was a student, you know, raking up the money to pay Phyllis $15,000. And we were sitting in the bar after the show was over. I think we were over in Georgetown, and I paid her, and she's sitting there with a cigarette. And, you know, she's 40-something-year-old woman at the time. I think she died at 45, so she was probably 40-ish at the time. But I'm 21, maybe 22, if that, probably 21. And she's just like, so, you the young man that promoted this show? And I was like, yes, I am, ma'am. She said, I heard you're going to go to law school. I said, yes, I want to go be a civil rights lawyer, and I want to fight for my people, and Thurgood Marshall, and, you know, I was in that little spiel. And she just snipped a cigarette, like, she said, you ever think about entertainment law? And I thought, what is that? Is that like entertainers dancing? You know, I'm thinking, when you say entertainment law, I'm thinking, are we singing or something? And she said, no, it's doing our contracts. As Black artists, we don't have African Americans representing us. Wow. We have Jewish attorneys, white attorneys. No offense to them, but she said we don't have many of us. Right. And if you look back in the early 90s, you can count on one hand the number of entertainment lawyers that I know of from that era. Exactly. So that was in 90. Took 2 years off, did Kirk Franklin's tour, did Marvin Sapp, did Stephanie Mills. These are shows I promoted all over the region. Did some early Tyler Perry stuff, I believe. David Talbert did some of his plays, did Shelley Garrett's plays. And when I say did them, what I mean is a promoter would call me and say, hey, James, I have the Boston through DC market for these shows. Right. And I'm going to run 9 weekends, you know, in those markets. Right. We heard about what you do. We need a young guy who knows how to run a street team, who knows how to buy radio ads. Right. We're going to pay you this much a week. Can you be that young man for us? Nice. So the national promoter might hire me to handle New Haven, New York, Boston, Philly, whatever. And then my job was to put together the crew to make sure the tickets got to the street, the posters got up, t-shirts got out, giveaways got done, interviews got arranged. And it was cool for me. I was almost like the subcontractor on a bigger show, to the point where we could afford our own shows. And we would just rent a venue out and bring our own artists in. But between 90 and 92, after that conversation with Phyllis Hyman, that's what I did. I did shows all up and down the East Coast, to the point where I got to law school in 92, and I had a show called Our Young Black Men Are Dying and No One Cares at the Warner Theater in DC. Wow. I'm a freshman in law school, and the radio stations are running my ads for the shows downtown at the theater. Nice. And I kept it real low, and then one of my classmates caught on to what I was doing and kind of started telling me, like, you know, he's promoting shows while he's in school, and paid for law school. And from that, my law professor, Spencer Boyer, heard about what I was doing and pulled me in a meeting. He was teaching contracts as a freshman in law school, first year. And he took me in his office and said, let me see one of your contracts. And I showed him my contract I had drafted that I was using for my parties and for my events. Right. And he said, this is wrong, this is wrong, this is wrong, da, da, da. He ripped it all apart. And I thought I was really doing some law, you know. I've been promoting for 3 or 4 years. Couldn't tell me nothing. We were just blazing. He said, I'm going to take you under my wing. And he had at that time William Beckton as a client. Be Encouraged was platinum. Be Encouraged. The big records back then was Kirk Franklin, Why We Sing, William Beckton, Be Encouraged, and I think Yolanda Adams later with Open My Heart.
And the gospel drama.
The gospel drama, yes. So, and in law school, I always told folks I just wanted to represent gospel artists for some reason. I came out of the church, church musician. I was not trying to come into entertainment law as a hip hop guy or any of that. I just wanted to help the gospel artists. And nobody looked that way. So we came out and immediately made impact because no one was really looking that way. But Kirk Franklin, William Beckton, Beckton was being represented by my law professor, Spencer Boyer, and Mr. Boyer took me under his wing as a first, second year law student. And by the time I got to third year, I could take his exam without even studying for it because I knew so much about entertainment law just from him grooming me, and did well in class, and went back home to a big firm and started building my entertainment practice in 95.
Supporting this podcast is easy. Just hit the subscribe button. See you on the next episode.